Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants, fellow energy enthusiasts. Welcome to the second edition of Young Professionals Workshop webinar. I am thrilled to be your host. My name is Richlove Bedu Adepa, Lab Analyst at Ghana National Gas Limited Company, with my co-moderator engineer Daniel Akrofi-Odai, petroleum engineer at Petroleum Commission. Stay tuned as we delve into this critical topic, the role of young professionals in Africa's energy transition, exploring opportunities and overcoming challenges. Our speakers today are experts and passionate advocates for energy policies. Together, we will explore opportunities, share insights, and chart a course towards energy transition. Kindly ensure your microphones are muted until it's question time. Thank you for making time to join us. We will take short address from the SPE chair, Ms. E𝐝𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐨𝐧.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good afternoon, everyone, and happy that you all could join us today for the Young Professional program today. As today's topic says, the role of young professionals in Africa in the energy transition, exploring opportunities and overcoming challenges. And we all know how the energy sector is undergoing significant transformation lately, and especially with the whole world shifting towards more sustainable ways and renewable energy resources. I'm sure a lot of our young professionals have been wondering what the opportunities are there for them, and also what are the challenges that some of them face. For me, I personally believe YPs have a number of opportunities, can take advantage of this by, first of all, continuously developing their skill sets in order to remain relevant. And a lot of YPs are very tech savvy as well. So, and there are a number of digital tools that YPs can leverage on to create solutions that I believe can positively impact the energy sector. There are some that would also want to go the entrepreneurship way. So they'll cut their own path, and in the process, they would also provide employment for other people. We have one of our own YP who is in Relu Interactives. They are an example of YPs who have taken things into their own hands and started the entrepreneurship journey. But all of this do not come without any, they come with their own challenges, I mean. And one of the key ones, especially for those who want to go into entrepreneurship, is the lack of funding, or even if there is, it's very, very limited. Even getting loans from the banks or grants, or even getting investors to believe in your dream, because sometimes you have the dream, you see the dream, how big it is, but getting the investors to also see the dream from your point of view or believe in you and also put in their money can be quite difficult. So those are some of the challenges that what people who would want to go into the entrepreneurship would face. And then also the skills gap is still a big thing when it comes to energy transition for those who want to go into the renewables. A lot of our universities are still running curricula that are not streamlined or being aligned to what is happening in the energy sector currently. So if those can be looked at, I believe our YPs, especially in Africa, will be in a very good position to drive the continent's energy transition. And yeah, so thank you all for joining us today. We hope to learn a lot from our speakers. really happy to see a lot more women today for today's discussion because there's always the gender disparity. So I'm quite happy about today's own. So over to you, Rich Love. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sheena. Thank you very much for making it a time to join us. We will also take a short address from YP Chair E𝐝𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐨𝐧.
Hello, Richland. Yes.
Yeah, hello.
So I'll be stepping in to take the address for CT.
Okay, all right.
Yes. I'm Abina Owusu-Ayeboah, Deputy YP Chair for SPE Ghana section. Once again, thank you to all our speakers for accepting our invitation and also all participants on this call. Thank you very much. So for the theme for today's lecture, concerning energy transition, exploring opportunities and overcoming challenges. In the energy industry, we hear a lot about transition from oil and gas to renewable. And I believe most YPs and undergraduates are kind of always asking the question, what next it is for us. So I believe this theme will address, with the help of our speakers, will address all concerns and help us look at a broader picture and a wider landscape to what we can achieve even in the midst of this transition. Thank you once again for actively participating in this lecture. And I believe it will be a success and the objective of this lecture will be met. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abna. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, moving into the main section of today, I will invite Engineer Daniel Akrofi-Odai to take us through the main section.
Thank you very much, Rich Love. Ladies and gentlemen, as earlier introduced, my name is Engineer Daniel Akrofi-Odai, and I'll be running you through the next section. In the next section, we'll have 4 prominent speakers who are very well experienced. And these speakers will be talking on the theme, the role of young professionals in Africa's energy transition, exploring opportunities and overcoming challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, please be informed that each speaker would have 10 minutes to share their insights through a presentation. And after each speaker taking a 10, we'll have a number of questions being asked from my co-moderator, Rich Love. After Rich Love is done asking her questions, we'll now give our cherished audience the opportunity to also share contributions or ask any pertinent question. So moving on to our first speaker. Our first speaker is a chartered engineer with 12 years experience in hydrocarbon extractive industry. Having worked with various oil and gas companies in Ghana, Kenya, England, and Norway, she's currently based in Ghana as a senior completions engineer with Talo Ghana Limited. In her free time, she enjoys spending time with family, reading, volunteering, and mentoring. Ladies and gentlemen, Engineer Loretta Atubra will be our first speaker for today. Engineer Loretta, you're welcome.
Thank you, Engineer.
Very well. The floor is now yours.
Okay, just to say that I feel like President Sheena has already given away a lot of the information I had to share. So thank you for that, ma'am. Let me share my screen and take you through the slide deck I've got. Let me see.
Okay.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Great. So
Right.
we already know the title for today's meeting. So just to walk you through the contents of my presentation, the first thing I'll say is that this is not my core field. So it was a very exciting challenge when SPE asked me to do a presentation on the energy transition. So what I've done is put together my thoughts on what energy transition represents. And I've also taken a look at the current state of the energy transition in different parts of the world. So initially, we'll look at the global overview or the global picture of where we are in terms of about 120 countries from different parts of the world. Then we will compare how Sweden stacks up against Ghana, purely because Sweden is the highest ranked country in the world. And because, you know, we're Ghanaian largely. So it would be good to sort of juxtapose what we have from the best with what we are trying to attain as a Ghanaian country. Then my last slide is one that just talks about the kind of supports that can be given to young professionals. So moving on to the first slide, when we say energy transition, what are we talking about? Transition is a movement, it's a change, it's a modification. It's basically you saying that when it comes to energy, you are significantly modifying the key sources of your energy supply and consumption. And one would ask, why would you go to the trouble of trying to convert the forms of energy you use from the existing ones, which is largely hydrocarbon driven, to a new one? Well, it's all kind of driven by climate change and a desire to reduce the rate at which the climate is undergoing that sort of evolution that we perceive to be negative, right? So we've decided to change the kind of energy we use because we have understood that there are alternative ways of obtaining our energy supply without negatively impacting the environment. Now, when we talk about sustainable energy, which is a term that is kind of interspersed through the literature around energy transition, but what exactly does sustainable energy mean? It just means that you're looking for forms of energy that you can utilize today that will not negatively impact the future generations. So essentially, you don't want to erode the quality of life or the quality of energy supply, of energy sort of consumption for future generations because of how you have used your energy today. So how do we actually get to the point where we say that our energy supply is sustainable? Well, if we break it down, there are two main branches, right? The first one is through the usage of renewable energy. And renewable energy, there are so many forms of it all over the world, all around us. And we call them renewable because they are infinite. As in, if you use it today, you don't have to replace it tomorrow to get an extended supply. It naturally replaces or replenishes itself. And then there's the non-renewable energy, which is, it's kind of finite, but then the reason why we mention it as sustainable is because if you use non-renewable energy, you are essentially using a form of energy that does significantly less damage or has significantly lower impacts on the environment. Now, I've got some statistics that I just want to share around the kind of energy forms that we've mentioned here and how they are utilized all around the world. So if you want to picture it, you essentially have the non-renewable energy on one aspect, and then you have the renewable on the other. So if you look at something like solar energy, it's very popular right now. A lot of people advocate for solar energy in countries like Ghana because we have a lot of sunshine almost all the year round. But if we look at Africa as a continent, currently, we are only generating about 10 gigawatts of our energy via solar. Whereas in the world, there is 1,200 gigawatts of energy that's generated using solar energy. So like President Sheena said, there's a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurship if you can overcome the significant challenges that exist. Because look at the deficit between the the energy supplied with solar in the world versus what
Is Engineer Loretta on the line? Oh, I think. Hello, Engineer. Engineer Loretta, please, we can't hear you if you are still speaking. Hello. She's okay. Very well. Hello, Engineer Loretta. Okay, she's dropped off now. So while we allow Engineer Loretta to, resolve a technical hitches, we'll just quickly move on to the next speaker. So our next speaker for today, this session, is a well operations superintendent at Alpharetta Oil and Gas Services Worldwide Limited. She began her career at Shell's Nigeria Exploration and Production Company, where she was initially hired as a reservoir engineer. She became the first Nigerian female well engineer at the company when sent offshore for 1 year to gather field experience, and later rose to night drilling supervisor in 2010 and drilling supervisor in 2012. She has supervised operations for Shell in Nigeria and French Guyana. She left Shell in 2018 and has since been working as a drilling consultant in different roles. She's passionate about helping the next generation be the best they can be through mentoring and engagement. Ladies and gentlemen, Oluwatope Adeyemi is our second speaker for today. You're welcome, Oluwatope. Hello.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Please, the floor is yours now.
Okay, thank you very much. Topa is fine. I only get called by my phone when I'm in trouble. So,
well
but Topa is okay.
Okay. Well noted.
Okay, so I don't have any slides. I'm not a fan of slides really. And I don't like talking for long periods of time. So I don't think I will use the 10 minutes. But I guess I'm supposed to speak a bit on the topic in terms of exploring opportunities and overcoming challenges, right? Okay, so a conversation, well, I have conversations a lot with a lot of younger engineers. And the question always comes up, what are the opportunities available? How can I get a job? Where can I get a job? And the different challenges. I'm not sure. I'm guessing most of the population we're speaking to today are in Ghana. We say West Africa is a country sometimes. So there might be similar challenges that they are facing. But I know if I compare when I came out of school and was looking for work and what to do to now, there's a big difference. When we were looking for jobs, this was still back in the newspaper era. I'm going to age myself a bit, but basically we just went in the newspaper. It came out Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we looked at the companies, and then we went and we applied. But then it was a good time in oil and gas. There were lots of jobs. The companies were hiring a lot, entry level almost every year. But we've seen that dwindle and go down a lot, especially in Nigeria, where you have most of the IOCs leaving the country. So there are less jobs in the big IOCs. We have the smaller companies coming up and they're hiring, but then the problem with them is that they want a certain level of experience. So it becomes difficult for the younger engineers. So when it comes to, okay, what do I do? What should I do? So a lot is being set up by entrepreneurship, and I'm sure some of the other speakers will speak more to that. But the truth of the matter is not everybody can be an entrepreneur. Some of us were built for 9 to 5, some of us were built for entrepreneurship, right? But for those especially that are 9 to 5ers, it's gotten really, really competitive. But then there's also opportunity for a lot of creativity with startups, solving problems. So the biggest thing, one thing I would say, well, where I would start with exploring opportunities and overcoming challenges. With the opportunities, I would say in energy transition, it's a wide net. There's a lot that is covered underneath that in terms of the different sources of energy that we can use, right? Obviously, the easiest one right now with all of them is solar. And in this part of the world, we have a lot of sun. So solar is something that is viable. But on top of that, we also need to start looking at problems and how we can solve them, right? It's not just starting a solar company. There should be a specific problem that you're trying to solve, which also brings in collaboration. So instead of you just going on and doing things on your own, you might need to partner up with 2 or 3 other people with similar ideas or similar passions, and then start something up. If you're not able to start something up, then you need to go the 9 to 5 route. Now, if you're going the 9 to 5 route, you have to look, it's not enough for you to just graduate from school. You have to look at applications, look at job descriptions that are out on LinkedIn or anywhere. Look at what they're asking for, look at what skills they're asking for. Now people are not just hiring a first class or the highest GPA student. They're hiring, looking for the person. So yes, a good GPA will get you in, but they're also looking for how well you would fit into the team. What kind of a person would you be? How would you integrate with all the different kinds of people you would meet? So that's very important. So what you're padding your CVs with, your CVs become very, very important. Even though you don't have work experience, what you've done with your time outside of school will also speak a lot to how you'll be seen as a person or as a potential employee. So these are times for you to look for internships. I know we all want money, but sometimes you have to go for internships that are not paid, just so you can have some experience to put on your CV. So internships, volunteering, events and exercises with SPE is a big one. Involvement with those and going for conferences. There are lots of courses you can do that would further add to your CV and what you present for yourself. So those are all things that you need to look into as you graduate, or you're a young engineer looking for work or looking for what they need to do. The thing is, like I said, it's hard. It is what it is. It's not going to be easier, but you have to put in the work to be able to end up in the company that you dream of. And even that said, I would say a short story about someone I know. He schooled in America, worked in America for a bit, for like 2 or 3 years, came back to Nigeria, and it was difficult to find a job. He thought because he had an American degree, it would be a lot easier, but it was difficult. And he couldn't get any job in the IOCs, but he got a job at a small servicing company. And the servicing company then was paying 150,000 a month. I don't know what that is in Ghana, but 150,000. Well, right now, 150,000 is, let's say, $1,000. In that time, when he got the job, 150,000 was more like $10,000, right? But even that was low, right? It was a lot lower than what he would have wanted to get. No, wait, my math is wrong. 150,000 is now more like $100 in Nigeria. But then it was $10,000. So, but even for a Nigerian entry level, it was still low. He was a bit downtrodden and disappointed about it. But the advice I gave was that, well, not everybody's going to get a job at IOC in the beginning. The experience you will get at a servicing company and the exposure you will get, you might not get it in 10 years in an IOC because there are lots of people. But with a servicing company where there are smaller people, there's a lot more opportunity for growth. So I said, look and see if you can stick it for up to 5 years, and then you go and then you work with the IOC. So anyway, so he went ahead, he took the job. Within a year, he was sent to Angola to manage a project. So then now he was making dollars per day. And then in 2 years, they were working with Total in Angola. The Total people in Angola liked him, and they decided to hire him directly through Total. So now he's working in Denmark as an engineer there. So it didn't even take the 5 years that I initially thought it would take. But you see, so sometimes we might not start off right where we want, but you have to see opportunities in at every phase. So he took the opportunity, learned as much as he could, he built as much as he could, took courses on project management and all of that while he was doing it. And now in less than 5 years, he's working at an IOC, making the money he thought he was going to make initially. So it's there. It's just the journey is just longer and a lot more difficult. But if you hang in there and you push for it, you get what you want. That is what I can say on that topic, unless there's more you would want me to say. Like I said, I really don't like speaking. I prefer interactive sessions. So I prefer people to ask me questions and answer, because I feel like I start rambling. So just let me know what you want.
Very well, very well. And I'm sure the audience would engage you very soon. Thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. We are very grateful. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, if you're just joining us, please be informed that we are speaking on the topic, the role of young professionals in Africa's energy transition, exploring opportunities and overcoming challenges. Moving on to the first speaker again, I think Engineer Loretta has joined. Her technical hitches have been resolved. So we'll give Engineer Loretta the opportunity again to share her insights on the topic. Engineer Loretta, can you hear me?
Yeah, Engineer Ode, I can hear you. I actually had a power cut, can you imagine? So
we are sorry. So sorry about that. And we are glad to have you back. Can you please proceed with your presentation then?
Yeah, I'm just going to continue from the slide I was speaking on before. Give me a moment.
Excellent. That's fine.
Yeah, so we're going through some statistics around the current position of the renewable energy forms. And I touched briefly on the solar and just drew a parallel between the number of solar installations we've got worldwide versus what we've got down here in Africa. And I was just about speaking on the hydroelectric power generation plants when ECG did their thing. But anyway, if you look at the amount of energy that's generated in Africa from hydro plants, we've got about 87 of those plants at the moment, and we generate about 1,500 megawatts of power. But globally, the power generated is much higher. That's about 1,400 gigawatts. So again, it just shows you the deficit that exists in Africa versus the world. And it doesn't actually matter which form of renewable or non-renewable energy you look at. At the end of the day, there's a huge gap between what we've got in Africa versus the rest of the world. For instance, there's only one actively functioning nuclear power plant that's in South Africa. There are 440 worldwide. So no matter the angle you look at it from, there's a lot of potential within this energy transition space. Now, just to take us briefly through the global energy transition status, this is information I gleaned off World Economic Forum page, and it essentially is giving you a bird's eye view of each continent and how it stacks up on the energy transition scale. So you can see that the scale begins kind of in a red region with a score of 20, and then it terminates in a very warm blue with a score of about 85. And if you look at the various regions as they've been classified, then the regions that already have advanced economies, they rank highest, as you would expect, because a lot of the renewable / non-renewable energy generation is very capital intensive. So if you've already got a good economy, your GDP is fine, and you've got people within your nation who are able to pull together resources very easily, then you end up in a space where your ETI ranking is very high. Versus when you come to Africa, you can see that we are more or less resident in the areas where it's predominantly orange, and there's even a bit of red, if you like, down there. So on a global scale, you can see the difference. If you're already developed, you are in a good position to be able to switch to the cleaner forms of energy. But if you are not that developed, if your economic strength isn't up to scratch, it's very difficult for you to undertake the sort of transformation you need. So just zooming in on comparing the highest ranked country in the world to Ghana, you can see that, I mean, Sweden is a much smaller country. It's got a much better gross domestic product. Every single metric that the World Economic Forum uses to generate these numbers, Sweden is in a much better space compared to Ghana. And if you look at the scores we have for Ghana as a nation, we rank about 92 out of the 120 countries that were indexed by the WEF. And just zooming in on some of the parameters that the WEF uses to rank these countries, you can see that they call a certain metric like a system performance. So they are looking at how equitable the energy supply is, as in whether you are from a rich part of the country or a poor part of the country, do you have access to a certain baseline supply of energy that enables you to go about your day-to-day tasks without any hindrances? And you can see the scores comparatively between Sweden and Ghana. Now, if you even come to one of the areas I find quite intriguing now that I've started reading around all of this, the transition readiness, I personally think that it's a very government-centric parameter, as in the government of the day or the political system in power dictates what you have. But if you look at the regulation and political commitment score for Sweden versus that for Ghana, it tells you that perhaps there's opportunity to get people in the same room thinking the same way about the energy transition conversation in this country. Because if you come down to something like finance and investments, again, there has to be the focused will from the ruling class, as it were, to give a lot of momentum to the various donor agencies and the NGOs who are involved in this process to be able to get a lot of energy behind what they are trying to do in terms of getting physical cash to where it needs to get to. And if you look at how Sweden compares to Ghana, again, it tells the story. So this was just a map to illustrate the differences between the two nations. Now, the main piece I want to kind of dwell on, and I think Tope has done an excellent job with that, so I don't need to talk too much here. It's all about cooperation and collaboration, right? You can't raise the sort of capital that's required to undertake any renewable or non-renewable energy project by yourself, unless you're very, very, well-oiled. But for most of us, we would need the government to have put in place enabling mechanisms. How do I mean? There are a lot of non-governmental organizations, a lot of cross-country collaborations that are going on. ECOWAS is looking at the energy transition on a regional scale. They are trying to see how best they can connect resources across different countries to come together and push the agenda within the West African states, right? You've got international organizations like the GIZ, and they are working very hard to ensure that as much stakeholder engagement as is required to kind of demystify the whole energy transition policy piece is done. And they also do have access to funds that they can make available for people to work on some of these projects. Now, there's also some of the energy transition work that resides with the private sector, right? It can't all be the government of the day or the minister or the member of parliament. Everybody has a role to play. And with the private sector, they still need to collaborate. They need to get funding. As Sheena has said, as Sophie has said, this stuff is expensive. And you need to get organizations like the African Development Bank in your corner, giving you the loan that you require to be able to kickstart whichever startup or company you are thinking about. You need to work with the international donor agencies to get the information that you require to be able to cut short the learning curve that you will have if you are to go into this kind of work. Now, if you look at my fourth point on the slide, there was one of the points that President Sheena mentioned was about curricula, and it's just written out there. We need to get very specific information about the energy transition. There is a treasure trove of data out there, but you need to have the time and the energy and the motivation to sit down and tie the loose ends together. So one of the best sort of enabling processes is to get the various educational institutions on board, get them to understand that the transition is real. It is happening maybe in 50 years' time, but it's happening, right? And just slowly get the way the educational system is changed. You want to get people more involved in thinking about how the decisions they make around energy supply and consumption today will not negatively impact the youth or the generation to come in future. So that's also one of the things that can be done to support young professionals. And they don't need to be 3-4 year programs. These can be short courses that you enroll in and you identify a gap in your current learning or your current competence, and you go and fill it in by enrolling in this program, and then you come out much better for it. In terms of the still using the word collaboration between government and private sector entities, you want to have tailored volunteering schemes, as in you want to be able to enroll young professionals in your organization. If you're already working within the energy transition space, you want to be able to take on board maybe 5 to 10 individuals at a time and get them learning the things that they don't necessarily know because they are more in the traditional energy areas. And before I sign off, I just want to say that even in our current states as energy engineers who may not necessarily specialize in renewables and non-renewables, there are certain skill sets that we have. Each of us has an EHS awareness. You can leverage on this to work as a safety professional within the renewable/non-renewable space. We all demonstrate leadership, and that's also a key skill to have when you want to work within this area. Project management, your cost estimating, your time estimating, your scheduling, your budgeting, all these are core skills that you will use even within the transition area, right? And if you've been offshore, if you've had the opportunity to work on a rig and you've done some engineering relating to that, that's also quite applicable within the wind energy region of the transition space. Finance, very little needs to be said there. If you're a finance professional, it's almost like for like if you go into the energy transition area. And then if you're an operations engineer, if you deal with working real time on, you know, process and instrumentation diagrams, if you are generating drawings, if you are doing all that engineering work around operations, then you've got a good opportunity if you get the chance to join a company that specializes in either renewable or non-renewable energy. Engineer Dai, that's all I had to share today. So yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing such valuable insights with us, Engineer Loretta. And I'm sure our audience, they are writing their questions down, and at the appropriate time, we shall engage you more. Thank you very much, Engineer Loretta. We are grateful.
Thank you
very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to our next speaker, our third speaker for today. So our third speaker for today is a trained chemical engineer with 17 years of experience in the oil and gas industry, as well as the pharmaceutical and food processing industry. He has a master's honors in chemical engineering from the University College London, and is an associate member of the Institute of Chemical Engineers of UK, a corporate member of Ghana Institution of Engineers, and an ISO member in the auditor or lead auditor certification. He works as a manager of the main plant and utilities for Ghana National Gas Limited Company, and was one of the key members involved in the execution of the engineering, procurement, and construction and commissioning contract of the first gas processing plant in Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, Engineer E𝐝𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐨𝐧 is our next speaker. Engineer Michael, can you hear me?
Yes, Engineer Daniel, I can hear you very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I don't mind at all. Please, you can call me Michael. It's fine. I'm more comfortable with Michael. So fine. If I can project my slides, that would be much appreciated.
Sure, you can.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I think my two speakers, Tupe and Loretta, have done my job for me, which is really, really good. Sheena also did a very fantastic job on that. This topic is a topic on my heart, and it's something that I'm always an advocate for, so it's always a pleasure to talk about it. The role of a young professional in this sector is very, very key. And I think they've said a lot, so I'll try and skip through some of my slides in order to make it much more interactive.
Sure.
The energy transition, we all know why that's we are shifting basically from the fossil fuel side into more renewable, solar, wind, biomass, and etc. And I wanted to focus on some key areas, trying to give us a statistical analogy of some of the data which are around our African energy sources. And if you look at this graph, it gives you just a bird's eye view of the current energy scenario in Africa. So it's more or less we have the three main ones, which are coal, oil, and natural gas, being the key ones that in Africa, in terms of percentage, we are using. And that's where we need to try and be sustainable by moving towards more of the renewable side of things. And in order for us to be doing that, we need young people in and around all the country in Africa to be able to do that. And what do we do? If we do that, what is the impact? We're actually going to get a very good environmental impact because greenhouse effect, mitigation of climate change, as well as that, one of the key important things are the Paris Agreement in 2015 that was signed by more than 196 countries all around the world, and to try and reduce the percentage of temperature rise all around the world. And that will be key as well in some of the key things that we need to do. Economic. Well, Loretta and Toby have said it already. Jobs. In Africa, now we've seen the brain drain. Everybody trying to get to Europe or trying to get the Americas to be able to find new jobs. If we do this and we do this very well, it will be meaning that we have sustainable job. It will stimulate growth in our economy because there's a huge gap that we can fill in that area. And energy security, we should be able to do that in order to be able to have a good energy mix and in otherwise be able to protect our energy security. Well, I think one of the most important things, and the two speakers have addressed it already, the importance of education. The STEM, very, very important in order for us to be able to focus on the renewable side. And as well as that, Loretta talked about certifications. There are various different certifications. There are various different, maybe installation, solar panel installation, maybe wind turbine maintenance, understanding the integration with the grid, and then energy storage system certifications that can easily be done. And as well as that, some of our key innovators, what I focused was mainly for Africa. So I didn't want to go too far into Europe or the Americas to give details on that side. But I felt that within Africa, even just within Africa, there's Pan-African University Institute for Water and Energy Resources in Algeria that have good programs for renewable energy, which we can all, as a young professional, we can tap in. There's the University of Cape Town as well in South Africa that is also really, really good in that side of things as well, where we can tap in as well. And also University of Nairobi in Kenya are some of the key things. I think maybe in Ghana, we may have University of Mines and Natural Resources, but I'm not 100% sure about our curriculum and how the effect. And of course, looking into various different scholarships within Africa, scholarships that can also tailor make to the renewable energy side as well. Entrepreneurship opportunities that Toby discussed that already. That is key. Entrepreneurship is one of the key areas as a young engineer who wants to maybe in between the ICOs or maybe in between a renewable energy company, a service company can be created. A service company, find a need, find a niche in which you can work and work very well with a bigger partnership and learn from them. I think the example Tope gave was excellent with the friend of hers that was able to make it all around the world now. And these are some of the key areas that we need to look at. Find a market gap and find a need and solve the problem. That is what it's all about at the moment in this world that we are. You find a problem, you find a need, a solution to it, and you're a millionaire. And one of the key projects I would like to emphasize on that I did, this was done in 2018 as part of African Alumni Ties. African Alumni Ties is a United States government-sponsored program, which a few colleagues of ours, Prosper, Amankwado, and I, and various different other representatives all around Africa, to be specific, work on foundations and training of smart grid and energy clubs in Ghana, technical universities. And that was mainly for the promoting of renewable energy and energy efficiency. We focus more or less on the northern area of Ghana. And that was a project which was fully funded by the United States government. And that, I believe, are some of the key areas that we can also give to people, we can give out and be able to be supportive. Innovation in terms of technology and harnessing our technology is extremely important to this. The fact that artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, various different case scenarios can be used in order for us to thrive as a young person in this world. Artificial intelligence is key for us. A good case study where this was used was in Rwanda, where in terms of population and grid size, it looks like percentage grid size was very low. So what they did was using solar home systems where you can actually get mini solar homes within your house done by the private sector, and you pay daily and monthly like how we do in Momo in Ghana. And that was actually a very good way to be able to catch up with the rural electrification side of things. And it's very important. You need to have the skill sets, and you can only get the skills if you train in such areas. Cybersecurity, data analysis, and system integrations are some of the key areas we need to look at. Policy advocate and leadership. I always say this point is one of the key areas we need to address. As a young person in an African setting, it's very, very difficult to get the audience of your elders. You're maybe a 25-year-old sitting in front of a 70-year-old man who thinks he knows everything and will not listen to you. And these are skill sets we need as young engineers, young leaders, to be able to channel, to be able to earn, to be able to earn that respect in a very nice and professional way. I use an example of Greta Thunberg. Is a Swedish environmental activist. A few years ago, she even spoke at a COP 25 and COP 24, and what she was a real activist in terms of climate change. If you've never heard of Greta, please Google it. Her speeches are all around the world, and it's very, very important. As young activists, we find a very nice, professional way to be able to influence policy, because in the end, in the next 10, 20 years, we will be the leaders, and we do not want our leaders now to fail us. So this strategy, collaborative building, data leveraging, and effective communication would really, really help us in this side of things. The challenges, funding, we've spoken, my two colleagues have spoken about it already. Funding is huge in this, and then the technical skills and related challenges. If you don't specialize in these areas, if you don't get the right funding, if you don't do research into governments with tax rebates, if you don't do research into projects with renewable energy, which will come with maybe 5 years of not paying taxes and various funding from all over the Africa as well as the world, you may have major, major challenges running these things. And that can be done effectively by partnership. And also, of course, you need some mentorship as well. If you need a skill set and you believe you do not have it, there are key areas where you can have key people to mentor you to be able to achieve those skill sets. Why are we doing this? I think we said it right in the beginning: sustainability and social impact. It will create jobs. It will help with the economy. Environmental benefit will reduce the carbon emissions. We're looking at our Paris agreements and trying to make sure that we can keep to it. And we can only do this in order for us to, is the survival of the fittest at the moment with this climate change. And climate change is not a joke. And until we try and push this through in Africa, we will be left behind. I think Loretta's presentation was clear. When you compare Europe, when you compare Africa, when you compare Sweden, and you compare Ghana, the gap is huge, and we need to catch up. So my conclusion is this: a young professional has a huge role to play in our African energy sector. It's a must, and we need that. And we can only do that proactively and engaging and continuously learning and having a positive impact. We are the future, and I'll end with this quote from Greta. I have learned you are never too small to make a difference. So as young professionals, we are never too small to make a huge difference in everything we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Mweku. We are never too smart to make a difference indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, Please be informed that we are discussing the topic, the role of young professionals in Africa's energy transition, exploring opportunities and overcoming challenges. Well, please, if you have any questions, kindly type them in the chat box at the appropriate time. Your questions will be addressed by the various speakers. Our last speaker for today is a surface asset engineer with ExxonMobil with over 7 years industry experience, spanning petroleum engineering, project management, business development, and contracts and procurement. She holds a master's degree in petroleum engineering and petroleum development from the Institute of Petroleum Studies, Nigeria, and a bachelor's degree in petroleum engineering from Covenant University, Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, our last speaker for this session is Chinere Princess Ofo. Princess, you're welcome.
Thank
Can
you.
you hear me? Very well.
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
Very well.
So I'll try to be brief.
Yes.
I don't know if you have my slide or I should just share.
Okay.
Okay, let me go ahead and share.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. I would share my screen. Let me know when you see my slide.
It's coming. So, ladies and gentlemen, as Princess works on the screen, please be typing your chats, your questions in the chat box.
Yeah.
Very well.
Okay.
We can see it now.
Okay, so I will be quick and I would stand on existing protocols. I think that the speakers before me have done a very fantastic job of laying the foundation and also emphasizing things that I was going to emphasize. So we basically know that we have an imperative to move towards sustainable energy. And that's because human activities have over time contributed to adverse effects on the climate, and that has implications for food security, environmental pollution, and even being able to have a home that can support our prosperity, both as people within Africa and the world at large. So we know that the world is dealing with droughts, is dealing with pollution, is dealing with famine, is dealing with even flooding, and many things are attributed to climate change. But what's the perspective I would want us to have today? Sorry. Okay. I'm trying to, just a moment. Okay, great. So what I also want us to consider when we talk climate change is there are various things that contribute to the adverse effects. And if you just focus on the pie chart that I have just at the bottom left, you see that there are multiple contributions to the greenhouse gas emissions. And we have a categorization via gas and also via economic sector. So you would see we have contribution from CO2, which, you know, fossil fuel contributes as well as other industrial processes. You have from methane, you have from carbon dioxide, you have also carbon dioxide that is contributed by forestry. It's also important for you to know that, you know, a lot of contribution also comes from agricultural activities as well. So to bear that in mind as we look at the steps that we must take when it comes to having like a holistic approach to handling this. And then when you look at sectors that are contributing, you have the electricity and heat production, alongside agriculture, forestry, and land use, along with transportation, buildings, contributing to this greenhouse gas emission. So what that means for us is that when we talk dealing with the adverse impacts of human activities, we must consider all the sectors that are contributing and have fit for purpose solutions as regarding that sector. Something else to bear in mind is that Africa as a continent, when we look at Africa, it's a continent that is still suffering from energy poverty. Some statistics say that, somewhere within 50-something% to even almost 75% of our population in Africa are without access to electricity. And then you still have a large population of people. Reference to the image you can see in front of you, the map as at 2018 showed that you had close to 916 million people utilizing biomass for cooking, as against other cleaner sources of, cooking as well. So what really is the energy transition when we talk about it? We have to look at it from the perspective of the three levels of the energy trilemma. The problem we have is we have energy security issues, we have environmental sustainability issues, and we have energy equity, or sometimes you hear energy affordability. So most times we hear a bit of a more pronounced emphasis on environmental sustainability, but you really cannot only consider one lever because all of it must work hand in hand. So you need access to energy, and that energy must be accessible by both the poor, the rich, the masses, to be able to have good living. And when you talk sustainability, you have to look at it in such a way that with access to energy today, you do not jeopardize the access for the future population or for future uses. So that means that we must have a very balanced approach to this when we come up with policies, recommendations, and directions for energy sources. It must be in such a way that that energy is affordable, and it is in such a way that we have security of energy for the citizens. And this can bring to bear why, if we consider the period when you had the Russia-Ukraine war, you would see that different European countries had to go back to rely on certain energy sources, may I say fossil fuels, that were thought to not be clean. That's because at the core, their priority is to ensure that they have access to energy for their citizens, whether it's for transportation or for electrical power generation or for heating or for whatever domestic and industrial uses. So it means that every lever is important, and that is how we should approach it when we talk energy transition. So from my perspective, when I think of the transition, I really believe it is reducing our carbon footprint by changing the way we produce, transport, and consume energy. And what this means is that, every energy in the mix is definitely important. And when we talk sustainable energy, it is not necessarily an energy subtraction or removing, for example, fossil fuels from the mix. It is that whether we are looking at fossil fuels or we're looking at other alternative energy sources, we must be able to decarbonize and reduce the contribution of that energy source to the adverse effects that it will have on our environment. But we must also harness that energy source such that we can provide prosperity for our people. So what are some of the things that we need to look at? And I'm glad that our previous speakers have talked about the commitments of different state and non-state actors. In Loretta's presentation, she talked about what you should do for private sector, for government, for individuals. And it is same approach I'm bringing here, that part of the things we would have to consider is energy efficiency and conservation. So obviously, if we can ensure that we can utilize the energy we really require to deliver for whatever application we're using it, then we can, manage energy wastage, we can be able to monitor and track what we actually need and utilize what we actually need. So when we talk about energy efficiency and conservation, it means that we would require behavioral and lifestyle changes. And we would have to harness technology advancements, even changes in land use. You still find scenarios where, you know, based on certain agricultural practices, you have, take for example, you're still burning off biomass, you're still, you know, having to have a lot of emissions from how the lands are used. So that would mean that even incorporating things like afforestation, reforestation, and actually being intentional with such type of activities, then improvement in construction designs, engine designs. Now we talk about electrical vehicles, but we can have hybrid designs for machines such that we can utilize various type of fuels. We have the opportunity to also employ decarbonization mechanisms, such as carbon capture and storage. We can deal with utilizing alternate and renewable energy sources, and then we also have policy reforms. The key thing I would want you to take away here is that for Africa as a continent, we need fit for purpose solutions, and every energy is important. Every energy source is important because we have a peculiar situation where we have energy poverty, and we are not even contributing up to 10% of, you know, the greenhouse gas emissions in the world. However, because we're going to see rapid industrialization, we're going to see increase in economic activity on the continent, we definitely have a potential to start contributing significantly. And that means that we must be responsible in the way we explore for energy, in the way we consume energy, in the way we transport energy, in the way we utilize energy. But I dare say that every energy is important, and fossil fuels are not dirty, contrary to the way it is being reported on the media, because if you consider the value chain of energy, there isn't exactly a green energy, even when you talk about renewable energy, because you have to look at from the point of exploration how that energy is generated, how that energy is used, and you definitely can find various issues with different energy sources. So take, for example, when you talk about wind energy, you have to consider at the end of life of a wind farm, what happens to the wind turbines? So how do you manage waste? So those are things you consider with, you know, the different issues you have. If you talk solar, you have to look at the intermittency of the energy, you know, how do you have constant supplies? And then when you are going to get, you know, PV cells, you know, what are the materials that are used to develop those PV cells? So quickly, I would round up by saying that the energy transition is a people-centered energy transition. And what that means is that humans are at the forefront of driving the decarbonization of energy, and the behavioral changes are being taken by humans, and then skill sets have to be developed for us to be relevant in this transition. And I think that previous speakers have already alluded to that. But I would say that some of the things that the young professionals and students will have to take home from today is that oil and gas skill sets are very much relevant in the transition. There's a lot of transferability of the skills you get from oil and gas, even for the alternative renewable energy sources. So if your knowledge of drilling engineering, being able to drill oil and gas wells would be relevant when it comes to even drilling geothermal wells. Your knowledge of reservoir engineering will be relevant for fuel cells. So there's a lot of transferability, and it's very important for us to understand that transferability and do a skill assessment and know what are the extra skills we require, or how do we need to build up on what we already know. There are also non-oil and gas core competencies that we require. A lot of the speakers have spoken to policies. Definitely policies are very important. So your knowledge of policies and regulations, your knowledge of rotating equipment, your knowledge of contracting, your knowledge of, digital technologies, very important. So in rounding up, what are some of the quick, low-hanging fruits that, people listening in this presentation can actually take? For young professionals, I would say that one of the things you want to do is to build technical depth, really understand what is this energy transition that goes by many, names and nuances as you hear across both the global north and global south. When you have this conversation, what really, and what are the geopolitical undertones? How do companies, how do countries actually come about their policies? So you need to build technical depth. So you go for knowledge, a number of these available by trainings, by research, by conferences, and you even have all those resources within SPE. It's also good that you develop thought leadership. So begin to share, the information you have and position yourself in such a way that people can rely on the knowledge that you have and people can begin to relate to you when it comes to having those conversations, so that you're in the rooms where you can make contributions and where you can also recommend fit for purpose solutions. It's also important that we have both an entrepreneurial and intrapreneurial approach. And what does this mean? Definitely, some persons may have to start up service companies, may have to, look for solutions to problem. But some people might, while in the companies they work in, take the entrepreneurial part where they work within the companies and bring up innovative ideas. And then we have a lot of, energy literacy initiatives to push. You would find out that a vast majority of the population in Africa may not even understand what is this energy that we're talking about. And we need to be able to educate them. We need to educate them on cleaner ways of accessing energy. Take, for example, moving from biomass to, gas. And definitely government has a role to be able to provide an enabling environment. So I would stop here by saying that the future is really bright. Young professionals have a responsibility to upskill to be relevant in this energy transition. However, a lot of opportunities abound. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Princess, for sharing such valuable insights with us. Ladies and gentlemen, all our speakers have shared their insights with us, and we are moving on to a session whereby our speakers will be asked some questions from my co-moderator, and our audience will also have the opportunity to ask. But before I hand over, I want to ask Tope one question. Tope, please, can you hear me? Hello, Tope. Is Tope on the line? Okay. Engineer Miracle, are you there, please?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I see Tope has replied she can't unmute. Okay. The question is pertinent to what she shared. That's why I wanted to ask her. So
Okay, all right. It was saying the host was not allowing you to unmute, so yeah.
Excellent. So we're glad to have you. So I have just one question for you before I hand over. You mentioned earlier that solar energy is abundant in our location here in Africa. Now, I want to ask, how can a young professional, considering this challenges of finance and the various challenges that come with energy transition, how can a young professional explore business opportunities with regards to solar energy, having in mind that it's very abundant? How can we as young professionals explore business opportunities when it comes to solar energy, considering the financial challenges as well?
Yeah, so obviously the financial challenges are the big ones. There are lots of, and there's the internet, right? There are lots of grants, different initiatives around solar energy for different parts, especially here in Africa, in our part of Africa. So it just takes a lot of researching and finding out something that applies to you or what kind of solution you're trying to provide. There are also lots of small companies, lots of solar companies coming up every day, working in different areas. Some of them working focused on small SMEs, some of them working on bigger cost range of the customer base. You have people that, companies that serve market women in their little stalls, and then there are companies that serve larger parts. So the key for a young professional that wants to go into it or seek opportunities, especially on the entrepreneurial side in solar energy, is research. So do as much research as you can, especially for the area you're in, whether it's for Ghana or Nigeria or wherever you find yourself. Do the research, find out what the grants are, and then see a lot of it. I've seen a lot of people coming together because one person has access, the other person has the expertise. So it might take you, also finding somebody else there. Everything is out there on the internet. You just have to research and find where you fit.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the feedback. So, ladies and gentlemen, I now hand over to Richlove, my co-moderator, to handle the next session. Richlove, are you online?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. So I now hand over to you to handle the next session.
Okay. Minute. I come on. Thank you very much, Daniel, and to our speakers. I have one question here for our speakers. Please, any of our speakers can handle this question. In what ways can education and training programs be tailored to better prepare students and young Africans for careers in sustainable energy development? So any of our speakers can kindly handle this question.
All right, well, I can speak to an experience I had recently. I was speaking to the engineering students at the University of Ibadan, and it came up about how they measure up to students outside of Nigeria, I guess Africa, but I would say specifically outside of Nigeria. And we found out that when it comes to a lot of sustainable and when it comes to a lot of information around or learning around sustainable energy or even the energy transition as a whole, the curriculums at the universities haven't been updated, at least in the public universities that we have. So I think groups like the SPE organization or other organizations similar need to find a way to start challenging the government and the different ministries responsible to make sure that all of these, to bring the curriculums to 2024, to study what the issues are around the world and make sure that the young engineers here on this side of the world are at par with the engineers outside. I've had interns come in to work with us, and they have a better knowledge and a better grasp of it than the interns that come in locally from within Nigeria. So it's a big thing. It's a big deal. It's something that needs to be done, especially I can speak for Nigeria. It really is something that really needs to be done. Our curriculum is way back. So and I think SP, so that might be something you guys or the can speak to and offer some help with.
Okay, thank you very much, Toyin. There's a next question here to this for Engineer Michael Miracle. Can you please share any examples of successful mentorship programs or initiatives in the energy sector you have benefited from and then you can recommend?
Okay. That's a very good one. For me personally, one of the key ones that I've benefited from, I think there are two that ranks the highest. I got an opportunity to do what we call an international leadership program with the US Embassy. And as part of the program, I had a mentor who was also within the energy sector. And one of the key things we did was to travel around 5 different states, moving from Seattle, which has one of the best energy mix, not as good as maybe California, but one of the best energy mix with solar, wind, a bit of everything. And there was a building called Bullitt Center, Bullit Center, which is the most efficient commercial building in the whole world. And I got the opportunity to spend some time in there to see how it all works. And with this mentorship, with this leadership program, I think it's really, really made me more aware about the sustainability and the fact that the various climate change challenges. Actually, it made my background is chemical engineer, as we are all aware about, and most of the time worked with more fossil fuels and gas. But it actually opened my eyes a lot in that area, and I think it's something that is very important for me. I also learned within that environment, as our speakers were saying, that it's a transition, and it's a transition that we're going in. And in Africa, we cannot move as fast in this transition compared to, let's say, Europe, because of our various needs and our various financial capabilities. But it's a good transition that we can actually gradually be in and gradually eventually meet the targets that we are in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. Please, in the next 5 minutes, we would take questions based on the topic we've discussed. So kindly unmute yourself, raise your hands, and then ask your questions. You can also text your questions in the chat box. Question time.
Please, I have a question in the chat box, but I don't know if you can see it. I have a question in the chat box.
Okay, please go ahead and read it.
Okay, so good afternoon. Thank you all to all our cherished panelists for such a moment to share ideas on this transition in the energy industry. My question goes to Ademi. Yeah, so I asked that more often after national service, YPs would want to upgrade themselves not necessarily fighting for jobs, but then you may want to upgrade yourself, and so you want to apply for internship in some companies just to upgrade yourself and to familiarize yourself with the transition and current trends in the industry. But getting responses or feedback or finding your way in doing your internship sometimes is very difficult. And so she mentioned that YP should seek for internships. And I want to find out from her what is the best way to seek for internship as a YP in a company where you wish you could go there to upgrade yourself and also get to that level, the current trend. Thank you.
Okay, I'm guessing it's me you're speaking to, but Adeyemi is my last name, so Tokwa is fine. So this is a question that comes up a lot. And the best thing, so there are two things. I know here, the YPs kind of, they have a group chat where they communicate different informations on internships and things. The YP group in SPE is a good one to lean on for opportunities for internships. But then if you're going outside of that and you're applying on your own, you're just going to have to use the internet and find out where companies are looking for interns. I know the IOCs generally have an internship program every year. They have slots open for interns. So you have to go on their websites and apply through there, and then network. I keep telling you, have to really leverage the benefits of an organization like SPE. So you have speakers that come to speak to your group. You have network sessions, you have conferences where you're exposed to professionals from different companies. Use that time to network with them and shoot your shot. You never know who's looking for an intern to come out. But those days of us just waiting and there were many slots open and available to us, that isn't the reality anymore. So you have to be intentional about every step you take. So go on the internet for the big companies, the IOCs, or even the local oil companies that are big. In Ghana, I guess Tolo is one of them. There are quite a few. Go online and find out about their internship programs. Network through SPE, and also use the opportunity when you have access to professionals during different SPE events.
Thank you very much, Tope. There's another question here. Was someone speaking?
Yeah, I was just saying thank you too.
Okay, thank you too. Thank you for your question. There is another question here too. Africa having contributes very less to our current environmental challenges and having its own energy issues, should we prioritize renewable energy and transition of energy sustainability by providing the cheapest form of energy for our industrialization agenda? This question is from Kingsford to our speakers.
Yeah, I'd like to take that question, Rich Love, purely because I think it comes up a lot when you have conversations as oil and gas professionals, right? I think the key word Kingsford is using here is prioritize, and that's what I want to dwell on. No one is actually saying that we should kind of abandon the traditional extraction of hydrocarbons purely to chase after solar, wind, or any of the other transition energy modes. But it's about having a mix. Okay, it's about trying to ensure that by the point where conventional oil and gas extraction is no longer the norm and no company will touch it, we are not left in the dark because we don't have the facilities, the personnel, the infrastructure required to be able to move into what is looking like the future of energy. So yeah, if you even look at countries like Norway, where there's been a lot of good work in trying to balance out the supply of energy, they still pursue oil and gas extraction very religiously, and year in, year out, they keep awarding licenses in the Norwegian continental shelf. And there's a similar story if you go even to the UK itself. So it's about the mix, Kingsford. It's not about leaving something behind.
Thank you very much, Engineer. Frederick Asaga. Hello, Frederick. I saw Frederick's hands up.
Hello,
Frederick,
good afternoon.
yeah, Kingsford, please go ahead with your question.
All right, my last question. Is the main topic is always about getting the first start of your career, the first opportunity for you to work. But if you try looking at all the local IOCs we have here, most of them are international companies. And trying to get your first internship or trying to get your first opportunity with them, you mostly apply through their mother companies, which is the brother company out there. And applying, they'll put you on the international grid, and having to select you, it has to go through the mother company, which is not basically in Ghana, and probably they have to put everything back to Ghana. So sometimes it's quite very difficult for you to get the opportunities because you not just be applying for your local company, they have to apply through their mother company. And so I'm asking, what's the better way to kind of solve this problem, trying to get internships with these IOCs, which are mostly international?
Yeah, Kingsford, having worked with a couple of the IOCs, I can say that in the initial years of their being in country, you're right, they used to channel internships through the headquarters and wherever it is, right? But right now that a lot of the companies have set up local offices, the internships are actually handled locally, but the bits you can take advantage of, and I think it was Tope who was alluding to this, right? You need to network to get into some of the companies. So what happens a lot of the time is the avenue is there for employees to recommend or nominate people for internships. You will still go through the process, you will be interviewed and everything, but you can be recommended by someone and you may not be aware of that opportunity because perhaps you've not had the chance in the past. And apart from that, there's also the avenue to get an internship through your school. So like KNUST, they actively send interns for interviews in at least one IOC, and Ashesi as well does the same. So if you are trying to get in on your own, you should just look at it from the perspective of establishing contact with some of the employees. They can tell you when the internship window is open, or they can nominate you for an internship. But yeah, I understand that it's very difficult, but it's possible.
Someone saved too, huh?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Frederick Asaga, kindly unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yes, thank you, Richland. My question is directed to Mr. Mill. It's about solar energy. In his presentation, I realized he was mentioning projects that have been taken in the northern part of Ghana. each time I go to the northern part, I really get upset because the sun scatters so much, but we get less value from it. I would like to know what efforts they are making to harness this potential to the benefit of the locals there. Because electricity consumption, especially in Ghana, is very expensive. And I don't know if solar is also expensive, far expensive than hydroelectric power. That's why they are not doing anything about it. I'd like to know what his take on it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the question, Fred. Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very good question. In solar in Ghana, you know, the renewable energy mix is not as great as we all expect to. Per the country's statistics, we're trying to look at, I think it's 2030 to get to as high as 10%. There is a solar grid from VRA in the northern sector, but it's not enough. I think one key area that we as a country, and it's not just me or an individual, it's more a policy idea, would probably be able to get these mini grids and small grids in such areas, very similar to what I talked about happening in Rwanda, where key areas, they're trying to get some small grids in order to look at rural electrification. But all those things involves investment, and it involves local, private, and government partnership. And as a country, we need to be committed to it. We need to talk the talk and walk the walk. So these are some of the things that I think would help. And the commitment is there in terms of the assertion to have about 10% of solar or renewable energy as the energy mix. But it also has to be based on the necessary financing and necessary partnership and cooperation. So I think it's a work in progress as a country. Private sector can join in and augment, but it also has to be financially viable for them. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frederick. Okay, so Kingsford, is your hand still up?
No, please, my hand is not up again.
Okay. All right. On this note, I was supposed to call our committee chair to give us how to join the invitation to join SPE, but he's currently not available. So I will urge you all to visit our website.
Before you, sorry, Rachel, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Before you do that, can I say something?
Please go ahead.
Okay, so I can feel it in some of the questions or comments that have been made, and I guess I can see it because I deal with it with a lot of the younger engineers that I work with here. There's a sense of hopelessness in getting a job, getting the right job, getting the job you want. I know it's tough, and it's harder than any other generation it's harder than generations before you to get the job. But I would just implore you to hang in there. Like I said, you can't just sit down, unfortunately, and wait for a job to drop off in yours. So you have to be intentional. SPE has job fairs, all these events. Go for all of them. Network, speak up, let people know who you are, let people see what sets you apart. Guest professors that come to your university. Connect with people on LinkedIn when you see speakers. Like I think it was Loretta that said, you never know. You might strike somebody's interest at a conference, and when they're looking for interns, they'll recommend you for the job. So I know it's hopeless, or it feels hopeless. I would say don't hang in there, don't give up, but put in the work. And more than likely you will get where you need to be.
Thank you, Adeyemi. Thank you very much. Please, do any of our speakers have any take home for us before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of certification you can get. Some of the websites give you free certificates if you complete the requisite number of modules. So even as you're waiting, trying to push ahead, take advantage of the material that's available and just keep learning, keep pushing. It's a difficult time. I mean, even in the Ghanaian industry, there's a bit of a break in certain organizations. So getting in is more challenging now than it probably was this time last year. But just take advantage of every avenue you get your hands on, and learn something, do something, and let your voice be heard. I'm sure eventually you'll settle down where you need to be.
Okay, thank you, Loretta. Michael.
Yes, I would like to add that mentorship is key, and networking. Once maybe you don't have a role or a job at the moment and you're learning, get into a lot of networking activities. If you're in Ghana, there's so many different networking programs that go on. Try and get into it. Try and have a mentor who would be able to teach you, who will be able to give some good advice. And you never know, through these networking events, through these mentorship events, the right role, the right knowledge that you would want to acquire will come on your fingertips so easily. Once you have the basic education that we all have, there's nothing that you can't do, and the sky is the limit. So just let's keep pushing each other. Let's keep encouraging each other and learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So please, if you would want to join SPE, kindly visit our website and then log in. If you are an old member, renew your membership, and then let's have a good stay here. On this note, we would want to extend a heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speakers for their invaluable insights and expertise shared today. Your passion and knowledge have truly enriched our discussion. Your dedication to this important topic is inspiring and greatly appreciated. Thank you all to our participants for being integral part of today's workshop. Thank you, every one of you. Besides your busy schedule, you've made it to this far. We are so much grateful. And thank you, Loretta. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Princess. Thank you, Adeyemi. We appreciate you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.